You're like, it's not small potatoes to a high roller like me.
Listen, I mean, I know about Atahualpa asking for gold all the way up to his arm. I've seen more.
That's true.
4 ounces? That's rookie numbers. I am from the land of Moctezuma. Are you kidding me? 4 ounces? We throw that in the river as a sacrifice.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unbelievable, the podcast where I tell 2 unbelievable stories from history to my good friend, one of them true, one of them false.
And it's up to me to figure out which is which.
I am your Southern Airways Flight 65 captain, Kurt Danner, joined as always by my co-pilot, religious geologist, Luis Mejia.
Hello.
Luis, how are you feeling?
A little moist, frankly. I was stuck in the rain before this, so I'm a little damp.
Okay.
But beyond that, I think physically damp, emotionally prepared, if you know what I mean.
I think that's exactly the right way to listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
So let's get to it. Honestly, I really think we're going to have a lot of fun today because both of these stories involve people so committed to the path that they've set themselves on. You know, they're so dedicated to the bit that it seems like they don't stop to think about if this is actually a good idea or not. Now, in these stories, I guess like these people are probably doing it because of their convictions or what they believe in. But I do feel like the situations in these stories today are the types of situations that if you or I found ourselves in, we'd probably be too distracted by the opportunity to do the funniest thing possible and maybe would not stop to think about the potential consequences.
I feel like that's something that's the attitude we carried all throughout our university years, Kurt, honestly.
That university years and still counting, frankly. I mean, I don't know about you, but I can't take it off. It's on me.
Ever since I moved to a third world country, Kurt, I feel like if I don't have that mentality, I will drop dead. For those that don't know, I am from a third world country. Like, I am Mexican. I'm not trying to be rude.
I feel like every other time we're talking about how Mexico is the greatest country on earth. So, you know, we love Mexico. That's well documented on here.
Hell yeah.
But before we get to our stories today, Luis, do you want to warm us up with some smoke and mirrors? Dare I say, this first smoke and mirrors of season 4.
Oof.
Start us off.
We're starting off, Kurt. And you know what we're starting off with? We've got 2 stories. And they're both having to do with Mexico, of course, because what else would it be?
Greatest country on earth. We were just saying.
Greatest country on earth. So, Kurt, quick facts, false, let me know, true or false.
Yes.
So as you may or may not know, this year marked the 700th anniversary of the founding of Mexico Tenochtitlan, the city that would eventually become Mexico City. Don't know if you were familiar with this.
No, that's it?
This is just giving you context.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
And so Mexico Tenochtitlan, the city again that would become what is now Mexico City, the myth behind it or around it is that Mexico Tenochtitlan was initially founded on an island in the middle of a lake in central Mexico. Why was it in the middle of a lake in central Mexico? Some people would say that it's because of strategic purposes, because they were being chased around as nomads by all of the different groups around the Valley of Mexico area. And that's a very sensible take, but I prefer the mythological and more fun take, which is a god led them there. And how did this god lead them there? Well, Huitzilopochtli, the main deity of the Mexica people, it is said to have disguised himself as a hummingbird and led the nomadic tribes of the Tenochcas into the middle of the island because the prophecy foretold that wherever the Mexica would see a cactus in the middle of a lake with an eagle on top of it eating a snake, that is where you'll plant your seed, or I guess your city. That is where you'll plant your city and your seed, I guess. So the story says that in around 1325, the Mexica found an island, they saw a cactus, they saw an eagle on top of it eating a snake, and that's how they knew to found their city there. And to this day, you'll see that there's an eagle atop a cactus in the middle of the Mexican flag. There's our national seal. Okay, Kurt? So far, so good?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Very cool. Now, Kurt, true or false? The bird atop a cactus in the Mexican seal is not an eagle. True or false?
What? Oh, man. I was listening to all of that thinking you were just going to ask me about, like, was that legend truly, like, the given explanation or not? And I was like, this is an easy one. But, oh, no, this is bad because, like, I feel like it's got to be an eagle because how could they get that wrong? But also, that would be the most human thing for it not to be an eagle. I'm playing the odds. I think it is an eagle. I'm saying false.
False. It is an eagle, or false, it's not an eagle?
It's an eagle. They got it right, I think.
Okay, Kurt. Well, that was a little bit of a trick question because you're right. It is an eagle.
Yes.
What we see today in the Mexican seal is what they call a royal eagle, an águila real, which is one of the national birds of Mexico, sitting atop a cactus eating a snake. The only reason why this may be a trick question, Kurt, is because there are some theories that say that the initial eagle or the original animal of the legend of the Mexica arriving in Mexico City was not an eagle. Because this imagery of a bird atop a cactus in the middle of a lake has been around for over 1,000 years, Kurt. You see some stone carvings of the Mexica and Tenochca people where you see a bird atop a cactus. And there have been some theories that say that that bird has been mischaracterized as an eagle. It would have actually been an eye.
Oh, I never thought about this. That, like, I guess it's not like they wrote that down anywhere that we've found. Like, it's just the image of what the vision is. Is it just based on like visual representations? So it depends on what bird you think it is in the picture?
Yeah. So who knows?
Wow.
Who knows? So there are some people and some archaeologists that say, hey, maybe it shouldn't be a royal eagle because it was probably something else. Sorry, not an, I said eye, but not, it's a cara is what some people speculate that it would be.
You're just confusing it further, Luis. Why would you even weigh in?
But what I'm saying is that throughout the years and as Mexico became an independent country, it has been considered to be a royal Mexican eagle. And to this day, the modern design of the seal of Mexico is the royal eagle atop a cactus eating a snake.
I do love that that's something on the flag, and there's a story for it. Even if it's not the original bird. I just feel like it's a really good reason for the flag design. Most people are just like, this color is this thing.
Yeah.
But we had a whole vision quest for this flag.
I think you can't go wrong with any flag that has an animal on it. You know, I mean, what, Wales has a dragon? Just any flag design that has an animal, I think is bound for greatness.
That's true.
That's what I always say.
That's true. Well, that was nice. I'm very glad. I'll say that's kind of like the first shot of season 4. Like I said, the first smoke and mirrors. So I'm glad to have gotten that one right. Luis, are you ready for our stories?
I've never been more ready for anything in my entire life, Kurt. And I've just adopted a cat. So yes, let's do it.
All right. With that spirit, let's get this show on the road. So let me start this first story with kind of a tangential anecdote. We're in Australia here. This is 1841.
Good year.
And we're talking about a guy named William Branwhite Clark. Good year. Now, William was a reverend. He actually also was a geologist, and he was spending some time doing some geology things in the Blue Mountains. This is a region of New South Wales, which at this point in time was one of the penal colonies on the Australian continent.
Oh, hell yeah.
So Reverend Clark found some specks of gold while he was on this trip. Not very much, but enough to show that there was clearly more somewhere nearby.
I'm just excited that I know that we're still getting into it, Kurt, and I know that there's gold involved, which is always good, but I'm just excited we're still in the part of Australia where it was still a prison.
We're kind of right on the border of that time period and what comes after, but it does play into it. So that it's always fun.
Yeah, I mean, you know what they say, how all Australian food is prison food, you know?
Okay. Well, so Reverend Clark finds these specks of gold, and then 3 years later, in 1844, he decides to tell this to the governor of New South Wales, who was a man named Governor George Gipps. The governor reportedly told him, quote, "Put it away, Mr. Clark, or we shall all have our throats slit." And again, this is going back to the penal colony thing, because the majority of the population of New South Wales are either convicts or ex-convicts. The governor is like, we cannot afford to have people know that there's gold to be had around here. But I will say, this is in 1844 kind of the point where things begin to change. Shortly after this, a lot of penal colonies in Australia would no longer be penal colonies, and they'd start moving towards a greater degree of autonomy and self-governance, okay? Now we're going to transition to California, all right? So this is 4 years later, in 1848. This was the beginning of the California gold rush. So after gold was discovered in California, hundreds of thousands of prospectors came to California hoping to find gold and strike it rich. Now, spoiler alert, most of them did did not find gold that amounted to any significant amount. But funny enough, going back to this point by the governor about how much Australians would want to get their hands on gold, so many men left Australia between 1848 and 49 to join the gold rush that there began to be serious labor shortages in New South Wales. Now, probably it was some combination of this labor shortage, and again, there's less convicts in the population theoretically because they're no longer a penal colony, and also there was a new governor of New South Wales, but some combination of these things led New South Wales to completely change its stance on letting people know that they had gold. So now they want to get into the gold rush, they're ready to get rich, but where do they have people start looking for gold, I guess was the question here. And so the government of New South Wales offered a £10,000 reward to the first person able to find a, quote, substantial quantity of gold and then tell them the location in New South Wales.
Nice.
Basically, this has to be enough specks or small pieces of gold that there's definitely more somewhere nearby. And just to point it out, £10,000 would be about $35,000 today. So this is a pretty good amount of money they're offering here.
That's nice. And the best part is that not only do you get the reward if you find the gold, you also know where the gold is before anyone else. So it's a win-win for everyone.
It really is. Yeah, you get the money and you get potentially more gold. Now, you would think the question, who was the first person to discover gold in New South Wales, would have a pretty straightforward answer. But this is not exactly the case. I mean, for one, it seems like it should be Reverend Clark, right? Because he did find gold first, but New South Wales doesn't offer him the reward and he never tries to get it. It's not really clear actually why they don't ever follow up on that. But there's further complications here as well, courtesy of a man named Edward Hargraves. Now, Edward Hargraves was born in England in 1816 to a fairly well-off family. He was educated first at a private grammar school, then later attended Harrow School in his early teen years. And I only mention this because he made friends at this school with a boy named Robert Peel, who would go on to spend most of his life in high-ranking government positions, including 6 years as prime minister. But it seems being rich and going to school with the future prime minister evidently wasn't doing it for Edward, because at age 15, he left school and got a job on board a ship for the White Star Line shipping company.
Okay.
He works for a few years as a sailor on the White Star Line's route from England to Australia. Then in 1837, he was appointed as an agent of the White Star Line to be based in New South Wales. So basically, he's going to stay in New South Wales and oversee receiving or shipping cargo. He left his position in 1844 and used the money he had saved to purchase a hotel in New South Wales called the Fox Under the Hill Hotel. We're back again now to 1844. This is again when this transitionary period of great change for the penal colonies starts. So maybe Edward could see the changes coming and predicts that there will be a lot greater demand for a hotel in New South Wales in the coming years. But on the contrary, this actually turns out to be a pretty bad business decision. The hotel really only ever lost money.
Nice.
And perhaps this is why 4 years later in 1848, when Edward heard the news that gold had been discovered in California, he decided to leave his wife in charge of their hotel and travel to California, hoping to strike it rich.
It's always a hoteliers, aren't there? Always. It's always them.
It's always a failed hotel that leads you to a midlife crisis career change.
You would know.
Now, unfortunately for Edward, he did travel to California, but he was not one of the lucky few who struck it rich. In fact, after about a year in California, when he learned that the governor of New South Wales was claiming that there was evidence of gold in the region and offering a reward to the first person to bring him evidence of it, Edward traded basically all of the gold he had found, a horse, and even a few other possessions to afford a boat ticket back to Australia. So he returns to Australia with presumably at least a little more knowledge of gold prospecting than he left with, and upon his return, he hired two brothers named James and Jack Castor to help him find gold in New South Wales. So by the end of 1850, the three of them were panning for gold in the Macquarie River, not really having much success, but Edward was undeterred. He suggests that the brothers build something called a cradle that would allow them to process soil much faster. Now, while the brothers are working on this, Edward travels to meet with Colonial Secretary Thompson. This is just a high-up government official in the New South Wales government. Basically, Edward wants to ensure that if/when he presents evidence of the gold, he'll get a reward. Like, he just wants to make sure that they're serious about this whole £10,000 thing. Now, this trip takes quite a while, especially because the secretary delayed the meeting a few times. And meanwhile, back on the Macquarie River, the Castor brothers completed the cradle and began putting it to use. Immediately in the first batch, they were finding numerous grains of gold. As they continued over the next week, they found a total of 4 ounces of gold, which at the time would have been worth about 500 pounds. Today, it would be worth about 3,000. So this is what you might call a quote-unquote substantial quantity.
Yeah, depends for whom.
You're like, it's not small potatoes to a high roller like me.
Listen, I mean, I know about Atahualpa asking for gold all the way up to his arm. I've seen more.
That's true. That's true. We do, just conceptually, we do love the story of fill this room up to my arm with gold, and 4 ounces is not going to get there.
Please.
So yeah, that we do have a high bar.
4 ounces? That's rookie numbers. I am from the land of Moctezuma. Are you kidding me? 4 ounces? We throw that in the river as a sacrifice.
Well, nonetheless, it's a substantial quantity to some people, Luis. I'll tell you that.
My privilege is showing today. I apologize.
Yeah. And so it's a substantial quality, at the very least, to the Castor brothers, and so they send an excited letter to Hargreaves. He returns and collects the gold from them, then goes back for another meeting with Secretary Thompson. He shows Secretary Thompson the gold and says he found it in the Macquarie River, and Hargreaves does not mention the Castor brothers. He is awarded the 10,000 pounds, and he does not share any of it with the Castor brothers. So he just fully takes credit for having found this gold. Now, at this point, it might be a good time to talk about what does the gold mining industry look like in 1850. Like what does it actually look like to be a gold miner?
In Australia, it's just one dude.
It's just this one guy scamming everybody else out of their gold discoveries, basically.
That's the gold industry in Australia in 1840s.
Yeah, I say that joking, but just wait until you see where this goes.
Oh, no.
But globally, for the average gold prospector in 1850, there'd be slight variations, obviously, depending on the location, but basically gold prospectors would pay an annual fee to whatever government for a license to search for gold. So it's really just like a bunch of individuals using simple methods like panning or using a cradle to find surface gold, usually not even finding enough to cover the cost of their gold license. Now, a couple years into the California gold rush, some people who had the money and means had gotten smart and formed their own mining companies. And a mining company could purchase land outright, thereby giving them exclusive mining rights to it. They could also then hire miners to do the labor, and they could do gold mining on a much larger scale because they had the manpower and the money to purchase industrial equipment. So even though mining companies had to still pay a considerable annual fee, this was a much more successful way to do things than just one individual panning for gold hoping to get lucky. Now, probably because he had seen some of this play out during his time in California, Edward Hargreaves wants to be operating as a mining company rather than an individual. But there's two big problems with this. Number one is that even with his 10,000 pound reward, he wouldn't be able to afford a big enough plot of land or the machinery needed to operate a mining company. Number two is that the government of New South Wales really had no interest in selling anyone exclusive gold mining rights because at this point they just have one location where someone found gold. Now, there's probably others, but they don't know that for sure, so it would be kind of stupid to give up this one-time sale when they could potentially have hundreds of thousands of prospectors paying annual fees for years to come. In order to convince the government of New South Wales to sell to him, Edward writes letters to several powerful friends he has in England to get them to pressure the governor of New South Wales. This is kind of one of the benefits of it being in this transitionary period between penal colony and self-governance. And one of the friends that Edward writes to is Robert Peel, who at the time was either prime minister or had just gotten done being prime minister, so he's really pulling some major strings here. Now, just to skip ahead, the government of New South Wales does end up selling land with exclusive mining rights to Hargreaves. And as for the other problem, the not having enough money problem, Hargreaves manages to come up with another 3,000 pounds to add to his 10,000, but this is still not nearly enough. So he also signs an agreement with New South Wales as part of this land rights to pay a total of 25,000 pounds out of his mining profits over the course of the next 10 years. Fortunately for the government of New South Wales, gold was found in several other locations, and so the Australian gold rush takes off in full swing, and prospectors from around the world are coming to try their luck in New South Wales. At the height of this gold rush, there was an estimated 430,000 active prospectors, so this is pretty good money. You know, I don't know the price of a gold mining license, but you would think that this is generating a lot of money for New South Wales, probably.
$20, you'd think?
$20 at least. You would hope so.
At the very least. Kurt, I'm sorry, Kurt, but I think we're overestimating just how many people there are in New South Wales in 1840s. It could not have been that many. I mean, if to this day there's like 5 people in Australia, you know?
No, this is not at all the population of New South Wales. I mean, I guess it was maybe at this time, but I feel like actually what maybe you're underestimating is how much people would travel for the news of a gold rush. I mean, don't forget that when there was the California gold rush, so many people from New South Wales went that they had a labor shortage. And that's a long way across the Pacific. A lot of the people who came to Australia for this gold rush and other ones were Chinese immigrants and probably other immigrants from Asian countries. But I think it really was true that, like, literally there were people around the world who heard they just found gold here and they're like, that's a good idea. Let me pick up and just move directly to there and hope I strike it rich.
I think I just omitted or failed to consider the concept of immigration in this theory. So I apologize.
But so this is making a lot of money for New South Wales with this number of people coming to the area. And also generating a lot of money was the Hargreaves Mining Company, because Hargreaves' idea to start a mining company at this point was massively paying off. And rather than panning for gold, the Hargreaves Mining Company was able to do open pit mining. Now, this is probably something you've at least seen a picture of before. It's basically where they just like scoop out a big section of the earth. There's just like a massive cone-shaped open pit.
Yeah.
So when they do this, they take literally everything from the ground, feed it through a steam-powered crusher, and then they take this mixture of gravel and dirt and feed it through something called a sluice, which is basically a channel of running water that has these things called riffles that filters soil or rocks of various sizes out from the gold. Now, I don't mean to get so into the weeds on boring mining techniques, but I just want to illustrate how different the Hargreaves Mining Company's operation was from the masses of prospectors, each individually panning for a few specks of gold. And you can see why over the next few years, the Hargreaves Mining Company saw massive success. So much so, in fact, that Edward actually finished paying off the 25,000 pounds he owed the government in only 2 years.
Ooh.
Pretty early on in the mining company's history, a town was built by the gold mine specifically for miners, with a boarding house, a general store, a post office, a saloon, and even some sort of basic jail. And this was probably another idea taken from the California gold rush. For several years, the Hargreaves Mining Company was the only mining company in all of Australia, but this finally ended in 1853 when the government of New South Wales, as well as the government of a few other colonies, began to allow the purchase of exclusive mining rights for small pieces of land. But these were only very small pieces of land, on average about 1/20th the size of Hargreaves Mining Company's territory. And although this probably wasn't the intention, these limitations really prevented anyone from competing with Edward Hargreaves' company until some gold prospectors came up with a very clever plan.
Open a hotel.
Open a hotel. No, we already tried that one. That one already failed.
Damn.
This plan instead, multiple people work together and buy adjacent plots of land, and then they could carry out mining operations as if they were one large piece of land. So basically, it's like a bunch of people come together with little pieces to make up one big mine, or one regular size mine, I guess, rather.
So it's communal lands then? It's like it's a parcel of land shared by many, basically,
yeah,
or
exactly.
many parcels of land counting as one.
Yeah, exactly. It's the communally owned mine.
That's starting to sound a little bit like socialism, Kurt. That's starting to sound a little bit left-leaning. Hello.
Look out, we are socialist gold mining.
Ooh, they called me mad. They said it would never work.
I told them I had dreams of a communist gold mine. They said, "What are you talking about? Look at me now."
I was laughed out of the university for this. If they could see me now.
But so some people do enact this plan, and it results in a fairly sizable piece of land that is operated by 12 individuals. Now, each of these people own their own plot of land, and then they also own at least one other plot that had been put in the name of a trusted friend or relative. This group unofficially called themselves the Many Miners Composite. And by 1854, not only had the total land owned by the Many Miners Composite grown larger than Hargreaves' mine, but they also were significantly cutting into his market share, because basically now there's like 2 mines in town where there used to be just 1 mine in town. Hargreaves met with the Many Miners Composite and offered to buy their land, and never mind that this sale would have been totally illegal, but there's a larger problem here because of the 12 individuals on the unofficial board of the unofficial mining company, 2 of them were Jack and James Castor, who, as you might guess, do not feel like doing Hargreaves any favors. So the Many Miners Composite did end up rejecting Hargreaves' offer to buy their land. Now, Hargreaves was not very happy about this, which we know because he wrote another letter to his old school friend Robert Peel, asking him if he could force the unofficial board of the unofficial mining company to illegally sell their 26 plots of land to the Hargreaves Mining Company, to which Robert Peel said, "Wait, what?" At least I assume that's what he said, because he did not respond to this letter.
Hell yeah. That's the way to do it.
Towards the end of 1854, something very significant happened. Really, probably the most significant thing in this whole story. One of the mining companies, and no one can agree who was first here, but one of the mining companies lowered their selling price of gold ore just below the market price. Now, not a very large drop here, but probably something like going from 90 pounds per ounce down to 85 pounds. But this is enough to get attention of gold refiners, especially since it's one of the two major mining companies in the region. So this is a large percentage of the market share. And obviously gold refiners want the cheapest gold ore, so if they can save 5 pounds over there, that's probably where they're going to buy the gold. Now, in response to this, the other mining company, which again, no one can agree on who started this, but the other mining company lowered their price just below that, so like down to 84 pounds per ounce. And this triggers an absolute Looney Tunes turn of events in which the two mining companies continuously undercut each other on price lower and lower. And this goes all the way to the point that by the middle of 1855, gold ore in Eastern Australia was going for just 43 pounds per ounce, which was about 25% of what it had cost just 3 years earlier in 1852.
It's the socialism, Kurt. It's the communist gold mine. They never expected for the communist gold mine to not make money.
Well, they're controlling the markets. I mean, what happened to this free market gold mining, you know?
Yeah, the invisible hand is showing once again that it's not invisible.
But presumably here, both of these mining companies are trying to starve the other one of profits. But this is a lot more effective on the not so deep pockets of the many miners composite. And also another side effect of this was that most of the smaller mining operations out there had gone out of business because they can't compete with this in any way. So it seems like things are looking pretty good for the Hargreaves Mining Company, but Edward Hargreaves actually had his own problems caused by this, because one other idea that Hargreaves had borrowed probably from his time in California was paying his miners in gold nuggets. Now, during the California gold rush, miners by mining companies were routinely paid in gold nuggets, and these gold nuggets could be used like paper money in any of the numerous mining towns across California. Since these mining towns were built by and largely owned by the mining companies, it was really just like a way to keep all the money flowing back to them.
Sure.
Now, Hargreaves had the only mining town in all of Australia, and he owned much less of it than a mining company usually would. In fact, he had to kind of like work together a whole system of buying back the nuggets from shopkeepers in exchange for real money, so this actually would work. But he had something going, and all of this was fine as long as the price of gold ore was fairly stable. But now that the price of gold ore was way down, that meant that his miners' wages were literally worth significantly less. And even worse than this, most of the shops in the town began refusing to accept gold nuggets as payment because of the volatility of the price. So the workers began threatening to go on strike. Honestly, they probably would have skipped the threatening part and just gone straight to being on strike if the job market wasn't so bad right at that moment. But Hargreaves tries to persuade the miners to stick it out a little longer. He promises to double every man's wages by the end of the year, which at this point would be about 4 months away, so that's a pretty bold claim. Some of the miners do quit, and they're quickly replaced with Chinese immigrants, but the rest of them decide to keep working and hopefully wait for relief. And I do want to say, by the way, Hargreaves could theoretically completely solve this problem by just paying his workers in cash, but for whatever reason, he does not decide to do that.
You're thinking too easy, Kurt. You're thinking inside the box. Well, actually, no, you're thinking outside the box when being inside is probably the way to go.
I mean, we're back around to we're so committed to the bit, we never stop to think, is it actually a good idea or not? we're locked in, and we'll stay locked in until we run this thing into the ground, so help me.
What's the phrase that we bothered for so long to see if we could, that we didn't stop to think if we should?
That's exactly every single main character in both of these stories is not bothering to ask their scientists if they should, only if they could. How low can we get the price of gold? Don't tell me the odds. So, you know, Hargreaves, he does try to persuade the miners to stick it out a little longer, but despite the promises he makes, the price undercutting does continue. And with the many miners on the verge of bankruptcy and the Hargreaves Mining Company on the brink of mutiny, seems like something's got to give here, right? Now, at this point, a man named Eugene Thressen enters the picture. Eugene Thressen was an American executive of the Grass Valley Gold Mining Company in California, and he's actually in New South Wales for completely unrelated reasons, but he hears about this whole price war going on between Hargreaves and the many miners, and Eugene arranges a meeting between Hargreaves and several members of the many miners composite, promising to solve their problems in exchange for a little, something. But he gets this meeting and tells them, quote, Gentlemen, you are arguing over the lowest price when you should be agreeing on the highest price. Basically saying, you guys are spending all this energy tearing each other down, when at this point you've cleared out the rest of the market. You could easily just make an agreement to keep prices artificially high and both get rich. And so, Luis, I ask you, is this good advice? I mean, this does feel adjacent to print more money, we'll all live forever, but could this work?
I mean, isn't that what, like, companies already do these days? It's like, okay, I'm going to start putting less milk in my product. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm going to start putting water in my product. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm actually selling milk that's not pasteurized. You know, I think it is these sorts of counter regulations to make more money. It's like capitalism doesn't, the only competition that capitalism creates is how can we make a product worse and sell it at a higher price, you know? So I'm thinking that this will work.
I mean, it's the old, monopoly, oligopoly, whatever you have going on. I in this time period, there's probably no monopoly laws anywhere in the world. So you could certainly just openly be like, yeah, we're holding prices artificially high. But, even today, it's like, we all know the Wi-Fi companies are like, they made some deals, right? Come on.
Of course.
I will say, regarding this advice, something that Hargreaves and the many miners probably didn't know was that as they had driven the price of gold ore lower and lower, refiners had started buying more than they could process. I'll say wisely predicting that the golden age never lasts forever. So now most of the gold refiners in New South Wales were sitting on a multi-year supply of gold ore. So basically, if they don't buy any gold ore for the next year or so, they're fine. And at this point also, the price of gold ore in New South Wales was so high that it probably would have been about the same for refiners to just import gold ore from other places. But it actually didn't even get to that point, because in 1856, gold was found in both Victoria and Tasmania, kicking off two separate gold rushes on the Australian continent. So in addition to gold refiners having an abundance of gold, it seems like Australia itself just has an abundance of gold ore.
Who would have thought? It's more than 3 ounces.
It's more than 3 ounces confirmed. The rumors are true. Call the Reverend.
Rumors are true. Yeah.
All this to say that if there was any chance of saving the New South Wales gold mining industry, it completely vanished when Hargreaves and the many miners decided to artificially raise gold prices. And within a month of the price jump, both of these groups had completely shut down their mines. Two men from the many miners named William Crowe and William Foster did start a mining company in Victoria and called it the Many Miners Corporation, which actually is still partially operational as a mine today. We don't know what happened to the Castor brothers, unfortunately. One of them had actually exited the picture a little early. He just sold off his holdings in the mine, but we don't know what happened to either one after this collapse. Now, Edward Hargreaves, we do know what happened to him. He was found in his home bludgeoned to death with probably a pickaxe or something similarly shaped in March 1855.
Very cool.
So not really a good ending for anyone here. And just to pile on, this whole ordeal was also catastrophic for the New South Wales economy, because aside from the jobs lost from the many miners in the Hargreaves mine, there's also all these smaller mines and prospectors that lost everything when the price of gold plummeted. And of course, if you have two new gold rushes on the same continent, a whole bunch of people are going to move to those areas searching for work. So New South Wales actually ends up with both a shortage of jobs and a shortage of workers.
I mean, I guess it's good to have a shortage of workers at the same time as a shortage of jobs. Best of both worlds.
It is until you think through it, because it's like, even if they had the workers, they wouldn't have enough jobs for things to run right. And even if they had enough jobs, they wouldn't have. So it's like, it still is two problems. It would ultimately be about 20 years before the economy of New South Wales would fully recover. And all of this because of a gold rush and a price war that happened in about the span of just 4 years.
Oh my god. I was about to ask how long, what was the range of time when all of this happened? Just 4 years?
The New South Wales gold rush, it burned fast and it burned bright, And it was a big bang at the end. This is really a pretty bleak ending, I will say. Really, the only thing that this makes me think, Luis, and I hate to end it on this note, but really the only thing it makes me think is that maybe Governor Gibbs was right when he told the Reverend, put that gold away or we'll all have our throats slit. Maybe he saw this coming from the start.
He knew. He had powers of premonition. Why do you think he called a priest?
He knew how this Looney Tunes price war would go.
It's true. I guess just don't trust Australia with most things, specifically their gold.
I mean, I get that, maybe this is maybe it's the finance bro in me that's really seeing this as a wild story of how there was a price war that just fully collapsed the economy. But I think I just do like the whole aspect of it of this was a really stupid thing to do for no gain. You know what I mean? Like, nobody got anything out of this. And at any point, if they'd stopped and thought, like, why are we doing this? They would have realized that it's probably for nothing. But we did it anyway, baby. We were committed. We were locked in.
I think you're not taking into consideration the human necessity to do things. And I think this was a case of, hey, maybe we just got to dream for the stars. See what happens. We might strike gold. In this case, they did, but not in the way they wanted to. Don't do things expecting a reward. Just do things for the sake of it. Start a revolution. Will it work? I don't know. No one knew that their revolutions would work.
That's true. We're gold mining for the love of the game.
Exactly.
I think that maybe there is something to that like, part of me does look at this story and think, like, maybe this is just what it meant to be a man in business in the 19th century or whatever. Like, maybe it's more about crushing your enemies into the dust and winning the price undercutting war than actually any economic gain. I'm not sure. I feel like I like to think of it that way, though.
It's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to earn less money than you. Why? Sheer drive and the necessity of revenge.
I'm a composite of a gold baron, and I like to think of myself as a composite of a gold baron, and I will undercut this price.
Call me an 1840s Australian gold baron. I'm losing money every day.
Okay, so we just got done talking a lot about the gold rush, multiple gold rushes, in fact. I mean, we had like multiple gold rushes in Australia and even one in California. Now we're sticking with the gold theme here because, Luis, I'm going to tell you about a golden age.
Okay.
And not just any golden age. This is a pretty wild one because this is the golden age of plane hijacking.
Nice. Hell yeah. Okay. That's got to be recent history then, Kurt. It can't be too far away.
Yeah, it's not in the ancient history. We got to at least have planes here. And I will say about the time period, as you might guess, the Venn diagram of the golden age of plane hijacking and the period of time that TSA has existed do not overlap at all.
Thank God. Thank God. It reminds me of my hometown of Veracruz used to be surrounded by a wall, like a defensive wall. And it was built in the mid 1700s in response to a pirate attack that happened in the 1600s. So they said, we're going to build a wall around the city to make sure that no pirates ever come back again. And indeed, no pirate ever attacked the city because it became not valuable commercially because it had already been ransacked 50 years before. So it's the same situation, right? Where you build a protective force in response to something just for that something to never happen again.
I mean, I will say, I don't know if this is the case with the Veracruz pirate wall, but this story has made me think a lot about how, like, when something is kind of, it's recently invented, some new thing is recently invented, there is a lot of times a period of time where you actually really could get away with a lot because it kind of goes back to like the regulation pioneers. You need someone to really break the rules for people to realize, oh, it could be that bad. And then all of a sudden they make all the, you can't do this, you can't do that. No pirates allowed in the city.
Yeah.
But pre-wall days, you're in there, baby.
You need to make someone be the reason why a law exists,
So, Luis, I know you're pretty familiar with modern airport security. You're a very global boy.
I am.
But for anyone who's not familiar, in a modern airport, all the bags are scanned. They have metal detectors. They have the machine that scans your whole body to see if you have anything concealed. If you're in the US, you have to take your shoes off. In security, they check your ID. They check your boarding pass. Now they even scan your face, which is pretty futuristic. And here's some things you can't take on a plane according to TSA. Knives, golf clubs, badminton rackets, fishing rods, fishing hooks, full-size toothpaste, full-size scissors, full-size peanut butter, because TSA considers peanut butter to be a liquid for some reason.
Explosive.
Multiple lighters. Explosive. It could be explosive. You can't take multiple lighters, but you could take one lighter for some reason. One lighter is fine, just not multiple.
Yeah.
And finally, cast iron pans. Oh, you're gonna defend the multiple lighters thing?
No, I was going to argue against the cast iron pans. You cannot bring a cast iron pan just because they're afraid that you'll try to clean it and wash it.
The cast iron pan one, I'll tell you, that's personal for me because I once bought a cast iron pan. It was like a little one, like one that's just for like one egg, like a little tiny one.
Yeah.
And I got on a plane and they were gonna take it in security, and I was like, come on, like what could I really really do with that. And I will say they did let me go through with the baby cast iron pan. But
Please, sir, do not take my cast iron pan. Listen, there are certain things I've never really fully understood why liquids on a plane is not allowed, and surely it's because of something to do with building bombs, right, Kurt? But how will liquid help you? And why are you taking away my jar of peanut butter?
Yeah, I mean, to be very frank about modern TSA, they started from a place of like, how much flammable liquid would you need to do destruction? And then it very quickly turned into like, how can we force people to buy food and drink when they're past the security checkpoint so we can charge them $15 for a bottle of water? So it's like, I get it, but also it's stupid.
Well, in that case, take away my Doritos when I go in through TSA, because Doritos are great for kindling. I could make a big flame with a big bag of Doritos and I can bring that in just fine. I hate the Transportation Security Administration. I want it to be clear. The Transportation Security Administration and I are not friends.
I mean, they ruined everything, which I think, as you'll see through this story, everyone was having a lot more fun before all this nonsense. Now, this seems like a pretty good place to point out that, we're talking about air travel in general, but this is pretty centered on U.S. air travel. So, Luis, are there any Mexico-specific airport security measures you want to add? I do remember when I was a kid going to Mexico, they were still hand searching every bag where they like take everything out by hand, or maybe we got randomly selected. But is there anything Mexico has today that's like a specific extra layer?
Not really. I think there's actually way less layers if you ever try to come into Mexico as a foreigner.
Ooh,
I
good to
know
know
of someone that just came to visit me from the US. They didn't even ask for her passport when they came in through customs. Not just that, I can tell you this, one of the funniest things about Mexico's security is not when you go in, but when you get out of it. When you're entering Mexico from a different country, at least when you go into the Veracruz airport, they have you form a line and press a button. And the button will either shine green or red. If it shines red, they check your bag. And if it's green, they don't check your bag. Mind you, this is before your bag goes through any x-rays. So I think it's just based on vibes, and it's allegedly random checks. I think that's just to keep you on your toes. So keep that in mind.
So basically, like, there's I don't know what the odds are, but there's some percentage chance that like they just don't check anything.
Yes.
Wow, Mexico's kind of chilling.
I won't disclose on this podcast whether or not I've entered things through contraband in this country. But
man's got the cast iron pan.
Let's just say my house is full of cast iron pans.
Cast iron pans and so many lighters.
There's
3 at a time minimum crossing the border.
Minimum. And actually, it's just cast iron pans coated in peanut butter.
No. Oh, wow, you need to be stopped. Well, obviously things weren't always like this, right? Before 2001, aka before 9/11, things were very different. Some airports had metal detectors, but most of them didn't, and they wouldn't check your boarding pass or ID in security. I mean, there really wasn't any security. In fact, it used to be that if you were picking someone up from the airport, you just go meet them at the gate when they got off the plane. Now, there were other security measures. In fact, airlines even paid private contractors to supply security personnel, but all of this was designed to be as invisible as possible so it wouldn't disturb travelers. So if you didn't see like an incident actively happening in an airport, chances are you wouldn't even know these things existed. But believe it or not, Luis, there was actually another instance in history where everyone kind of suddenly realized, oh, airplanes need way more security. So 9/11 was like the second time that this happened.
Okay.
And back in the early days, there was really no security. I mean, it was really a free-for-all. And as you might imagine, these are the perfect conditions for a plane hijacking golden age.
Ooh. Yes.
So in the 50s and 60s, air travel really became more common, and it was really very different from air travel today because not only was this the golden age of plane hijacking, this was also the golden age of air travel. In the 60s, planes were significantly more spacious in pretty much every way. It was not uncommon for planes to have a bar or a lounge on board. Food was more commonly served and was usually much better and much fresher than today. Passengers were often served multi-course meals or given champagne, and this is also the time period when people would dress up for going on a plane. So men would wear suits, women would wear dresses and high heels. And one thing that's also very iconic about this time period is that
smoking inside, baby.
Smoking inside. I mean, that's another perk. But in addition to that, Stewardesses were always these beautiful young women who had been given extensive training in etiquette and how to be charming. And by the way, they also could get fired for gaining too much weight. So, as usual, never a golden age for everyone. But I digress.
Classic. Yeah.
But I just want to send you some pictures of what air travel looked like in the 60s to get your reaction, because I feel like when you see it, you really understand how different it is. So, Luis, what sticks out to you from these pictures?
Okay, Kurt. Well, first of all, I'm going to be very sad, if not for any other reason than there was so much space on these planes. My God, for everyone's reference, I measure 6'2". I'm real handsome. I have a mustache and I read feminist literature. But as a certified big tall boy, I hate flying because nothing is made for my size. I'm too big for airplane seats. And what I'm noticing here is that even in the picture where you showed me several rows of what I would assume is non-luxury seating, you can see that there's plenty of room for you to spread out your legs. But beyond that, you have spaces that look more like lounges, like maybe even airport lounges, but up in the sky. There's a full bar with a bartender. There's little tables.
Yeah.
There's full fruit baskets just laying out, people drinking alcohol, smoking cigarettes. And there's a man with a cheese board cutting up what looks like 4 different types of cheeses of your choice, which is kind of insane. Those are not even the pretzels you get these days. And to these days, you don't even get pretzels. These people are getting a full charcuterie board on their flight. But then again, you do notice just they're like every woman in these pictures is wearing their pearls. Every man is wearing their nicest suit. Different times for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you look at it, you realize what a vastly different experience it is. But I will say that when I looked at some pictures of stuff, that was kind of what stuck out to me too, was number one, how much more it seemed like there was a social aspect to it.
Sure.
That these bars or lounges, really seriously, I mean, it looks like a good time, frankly. And also, they got some high ceilings on these planes.
Yeah, right.
Holy cow. They got a lot of headroom.
These people are fully standing up, like this looks more like a party bus. And it just gets me thinking, where are they putting all their luggage, frankly? What's going on here?
That's true. But I mean, I think if you look at some pictures of this, you can really understand why people refer to this as the golden age of air travel. And the reason for all this extravagance was that airlines were trying to match the experience of traveling by train or boat, but basically make it fancier. Now, it might seem a little absurd for airlines to be competing with train or boat travel, but actually 1955 was the first year that more Americans traveled by plane than by train. So
wow.
This is a fairly new development. And this desire to make the experience similar to traveling by train is also why there was basically no security. So you can bring whatever you want on board: guns, knives, matches, as many lighters as you want.
Cast iron pans.
Pans all over the place. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the cast iron pan on plane golden age as well. There's literally no airport security. You just show up and get on the plane. Some flights wouldn't even have you pay for your ticket until the plane had departed, which, again, you can see this is similar to how some trains would operate.
Sure.
Really, the only thing you had to do was sometimes you had to have a paper ticket to show to the flight attendants so they can punch it when you get on the plane. And one other detail about the security here, since we're talking about hijackings, in this time period, the door to the cockpit did not lock. In fact, it was not uncommon for passengers to just walk into the cockpit before the flight took off and make small talk with the pilot. It's just so hard to picture now.
I would do this.
See what I mean? We're right at home in this time period.
Yeah.
Just so we can understand how significant this golden age of plane hijacking was, let me give you a little timeline, okay? So from 1929 to 1957, this is a 30-year time period, there were less than 20 plane hijackings worldwide. Then from 1957 to 1968, so this is only a 10-year time period, there were about 40 worldwide. And then from 1968 to 1972, so just a 4-year time period, there were 326 planes hijacked. And if you break that down, that's an average of one hijacking every 5 days. So this seems pretty crazy, right?
I think we could have had more. I'm sorry, but I think...
Those are rookie numbers.
Yeah, those are rookie numbers. I think we can have more hijackings considering the level of security, which honestly, I think gets you to the point that maybe man is inherently good, right? With such lax security, you would think there would be even more hijackings. But maybe this shows inherent morality within human beings, or the inherent feelings of being unable to do something, as in drive a plane. So I think I think it's either inherent morality or inherent insecurity, whichever one you want.
But if you think about this like in the context of what we would think of as plane hijackings today, where it's some situation where, you know, it's a terrorism thing, or people are, you know, really threatening to do a lot of damage. I mean, imagining one of these happening every 5 days, that would seem like it's all anyone's talking about, right?
Yeah. Course.
So this seems like it would have been pretty crazy, pretty significant, but it really wasn't super terrifying. It was more like just an inconvenience.
Nope, it happens.
Because in the first hijackings, it was basically up to the pilot to decide what to do. And since the pilot felt like they were responsible for the safety of the passengers in the same way that a captain of a boat would be, they would completely comply with the hijackers' demands. And so this became the default policy of airlines. So this means that all you need to do to hijack a plane in the 60s is pack a gun and announce your demands. And Luis, what do you think the majority of hijackers wanted?
Cast iron pans and 4 lighters each.
Cast iron pans all around. You know, truthfully, I thought you would say money, but cast iron pans is a good answer too. However, it's neither of those things. What hijackers wanted most, evidently, was to go to Cuba.
Did you say go to Cuba?
I said to go to Cuba, yes.
Yes. Oh, thank God.
Let me present to you a really funny graph listing some hijacking attempts from this time period. So these are things demanded by hijackers between 1968 and 1972 of 137 hijackings, okay? So 26 of them did ask for money in some format, all right? Now, one person wanted to go to the United States. One person wanted to go to Switzerland. One person wanted to go to Sweden. One to South Vietnam. One to North Vietnam. One to North Korea. One to Israel. One to Egypt. One to the Bahamas. 2 people to Canada. 3 people to Italy. 4 people to Mexico. And finally, 90 people hijacked a plane and wanted to go to Cuba. So you can see it's not just by a little bit. Overwhelmingly, in the golden age of hijacking, people want to go to Cuba.
So really, hijacking back in the day was not asking for demands. It was just hitching a ride, essentially. Forcing.
It was just a free trip to Cuba.
Yeah, you're paying for your ticket to Cleveland and end up in Guadalajara. Like, you know, please, sir, I know I purchased my ticket to New Jersey, but I want to end up in Cuba. It's fantastic.
And I have a gun.
And sorry. And I have a gun and 17 lighters.
17 lighters. I have a cast iron pan and I'm not afraid to use it. Now, you might wonder, why is it that such an overwhelming number of people want to go to Cuba? Well, since it was a Cold War still at this point in time, Cuba wouldn't extradite to the U.S., so that's one reason. But also, Cuba just successfully pulled off a communist revolution. So if you're a revolutionary or a communist, or maybe even a communist revolutionary, Cuba could seem like a pretty good place to be. Now, sometimes people would demand money as well, but it really does seem like, for the most part, people just wanted to go to Cuba. And so the pilot would take them to Cuba.
I just want to go paragliding, the Bay of Pigs. Why are we stopping people from that luxury?
I'm a simple man with simple demands, and I demand a direct flight to Havana. Come on, baby. So the pilot and airlines would completely comply with this. You know, if they needed to stop at an airport in the U.S. to refuel or change pilots on the way, that was fine. When they'd get to Cuba, the other passengers would get hotel accommodations paid for by the airline. They would also get some perks, such as Cuban cigars, performances from live bands, shrimp and steak dinners, and maybe even pictures on the tarmac with Che Guevara.
Okay.
So not only would the Cuban government bill the airlines for all of this, but it also seems like there was just a general fee because, again, there's not supposed to be any travel between Cuba and the U.S. So it's like every time a hijacked plane lands in Cuba, the U.S. government owes Fidel Castro a payoff, basically.
It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's almost like if your plane gets hijacked, you're secretly hoping it takes you to Cuba. You know, at the very least, you're getting a slight vacation.
And odds are it will.
Yeah, right.
Seriously, that's how a lot of people looked at it. You know, a lot of passengers really didn't mind this too much because, you know, maybe it's a little inconvenient, but you get this great night in Havana and this great story for free. And the next day, the airline's going to fly you to your destination anyway. So, you know, it's really just a little hiccup in things. And I also do just want to point out at this point, you know, it's the Cold War. So the U.S. has a trade embargo and travel ban on Cuba. So the U.S. government is like, Americans are not allowed to go to Cuba under any circumstances unless you own a gun and buy a plane ticket. Then you'll immediately be taken to Cuba for free.
God, that's awesome. It's like the U.S. government is pushing for people to do this.
And also on the flip side, Cubans were, and at this point still are, not allowed to leave Cuba. So over the years, lots of Cubans made very risky attempts to get to the U.S. Some of these were successful, but some of them got caught or died in the process. And I guess it's just like a little weird to think about people going through all the trouble of hijacking a plane just to go to an island where a significant number of the people who live on that island are desperately trying to find a way to escape.
They're doing it again, Kurt, for the love of the game.
Again, for the love of the game, baby.
Yeah.
You wouldn't understand it.
Yeah.
Now, as the hijackings increased, the U.S. government increasingly put more pressure on airlines to institute safety measures, but airlines really thought that any amount of security would make passengers feel like they were being treated like criminals, which it's really funny to compare that to today where the TSA is like, everybody empty your pockets and take your shoes off now.
Yeah. And open up, baby. Let me see it.
Exactly. And funny enough, airlines also calculated that the cost from hijackings would be less than the cost of permanent security measures. So believe it or not, Luis, business-wise, it made sense to just keep flying people to Cuba.
Amazing. We're not only ready for a plane to be hijacked, we're betting on it. American Airlines, hijacking 6 out of 10 times.
That's, in this time period, I feel like if you actually wanted to go to Cuba, a good plan would just be fly random flights, hoping it'll get hijacked. Statistically, if it gets hijacked, you're going to Cuba.
Love Cuba? We'll get you there. Pan Am.
Just not when you're expecting.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, as always, the golden age can't last forever. And so here is what ended the golden age of hijacking. On November 10th, 1972, 3 men named Melvin Cale, Louis Moore, and Henry Jackson Jr. boarded Southern Airways Flight 49 in Birmingham, Alabama. This plane was scheduled to fly to Florida, but that was interrupted when, shortly after takeoff, the 3 men produced guns and a fake grenade and announced that they were taking over the plane.
Very cool.
So, Luis, what do you think they demanded?
Let me take a quick guess. A photo op with Che Guevara and 5 cigars straight from the source.
5 cigars straight out of Fidel Castro's mouth. No, good guess. But actually, in this case, they want to go to Detroit.
Oh, but yes. That was my second option, Kurt.
Of course.
Of course it was. Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. That was
I almost said Detroit, actually.
I actually stopped myself from saying Detroit to say Cuba.
So, yeah, seriously, though, they want to go to Detroit, but primarily they want money, and they weren't the first ones to demand money. In fact, demanding ransom money was becoming more and more common. 1 year earlier, the man known as D.B. Cooper had gotten the FBI to give him $200,000 in a parachute before making his escape. But in this case, the reason why they want money, or at least the reason they claim, is a little bit strange. So, it's truly impossible to know what's what here. So, I'm just going to give you the 2 different sides of the story, and you can draw your own conclusions, okay?
Very cool.
So one side of this is that all 3 of these men had some form of criminal record or were currently being accused of crimes by the Detroit police. Louis Moore and Henry Jackson were being accused of several rapes and assaults, and Melvin Cale had actually been serving a 5-year sentence for grand larceny in the Tennessee State Penitentiary, but he had escaped. So basically, the idea would be these men were career criminals who hated the Detroit Police Department.
Why were they going back?
See, that's what we're getting to.
Okay.
Because another side of the story is that Louis Moore and Henry Jackson were in the process of suing the city of Detroit over allegations of police brutality. They wanted a $4 million settlement, but instead the city offered them $25. And this is also when the Detroit police made these accusations of crimes against Moore and Jackson. It's worth noting that Moore and Jackson had no prior convictions or allegations of any crimes before this. And it also seems worth noting that all 3 of these hijackers were black, and whether or not they were subjected to police brutality, it's undeniable that in the 60s there were many instances of police brutality by the Detroit police, specifically against black people. So
it's like, okay, yeah, let me go back to Detroit to sue the city for police brutality by committing another crime. By hijacking a plane. Flawless.
It's genius, really.
Yeah.
Now, not only were Moore and Jackson angry at this $25 counteroffer from the city, but Moore also claims he was directly threatened by police. And one example of this is he states that police showed him photos someone had taken of his wife and children and said to him, quote, "You have a very beautiful wife. It would be a shame if every morning for the rest of your life you had to roll over in bed and remember you're the reason her face is disfigured." So that's
crumbs.
pretty intense. And then just a last little side note to all of this is that Melvin Kale's connection presumably would be that he was Louis Moore's half-brother. So that's how he ended up hijacking the plane.
Okay.
Now, you would think that most people would probably give up on the lawsuit when they get the $25 counteroffer from the city. But Jackson and Moore luckily figured out a clever little loophole in the legal system, as you've identified, committing another crime.
Yeah.
Just simply hijack a plane, then demand it be flown to Detroit, where the city will pay them not $4 million, but $10 million, which would be the modern equivalent of $80 million.
Nice. Yes. Perfect plan.
We're all in on it, baby. And truthfully, the only reason that this didn't work immediately is that it seems like no one could come up with $10 million. Southern Airways and the Detroit City Council both chipped in $500,000, which was really all either one of them could spare. And they have this $1 million ready on the runway in Detroit. They've also got the mayor of Detroit and several other city officials waiting on the tarmac for the plane to land, apparently getting rained on a little bit. And the plane circles 20,000 feet above Detroit while the authorities communicate with the hijackers via radio and try to explain the situation to them. But the hijackers aren't satisfied. They want the whole $10 million or nothing. So they tell the pilot to fly to Cleveland. They land there, and in Cleveland, FBI agents try to approach the plane, but Henry Jackson threatens to use the fake grenade, so the FBI agents back off. Then they fly to Toronto and circle above the airport for 3 hours while they're waiting for the FBI to arrive in separate planes with the bag of money.
Ooh.
And I just want to emphasize at this point that the FBI is literally being forced to follow them around with a bag of ransom money. They have this physical bag that they're having to fly to different cities following this plane.
So cool.
At this point, it's almost 5 a.m. It's been 12 hours since the flight left Birmingham, Alabama. The hijacked plane and the 2 planes of FBI agents land in Toronto, where the FBI offers the hijackers an additional $500,000. So now they're up to $1.5 million.
Okay, we're making progress.
We're making progress. We're bidding them up little by little.
Yeah, little by little.
But the hijackers again reject this offer. They're sticking to their guns. They want the $10 million, and they tell the pilot to fly them to Knoxville, Tennessee. Now, it's about a 4-hour flight from Toronto to Knoxville, and I actually looked this up. I wanted to know how long it was because after leaving Toronto, the hijackers decided to get into the plane's liquor cabinet and seemingly get pretty wasted.
Yeah. Yeah. What else were they going to do? They had been in this plane for 12 hours.
And it's getting boring in this hijacking. Come on.
Yeah, man. Come on. You got to spice up the hijacking. If you're already just being chased around, might as well get a little tipsy. Got the right idea.
They're giving the FBI the runaround. They're drunk on the plane's bar cart. They also share this with the rest of the passengers. So honestly, starting to seem like this could be a pretty good time.
Pretty nice, yeah.
That is, until they arrive in Tennessee.
Uh-oh.
When they arrive in Tennessee, Louis Moore radioed the FBI to tell them, quote, "If we don't get what we want, we're going to bomb Oak Ridge."
No.
And this would be referring to the Atomic Energy Commission located in Oak Ridge, 20 miles west of Knoxville.
Oh, no.
Now, both the authorities and Louis Moore knew that the Atomic Energy Commission housed a uranium reactor core.
Jesus.
So this is quite an escalation. Now the hijackers not only have a plane full of hostages, but they're also threatening to turn half of Tennessee into an exclusion zone.
Wow. Hey, listen, go big or go home. They're wasted. They're wasted 10,000 feet high above the sky, and might as well get crazy with it.
I mean, this seems like a good time to mention again. These stories, I feel like if we found ourselves just dropped into the situation, we'd be way too committed to the bit to ever ask if we should be doing this, only if we could be doing this.
Exactly. Yeah. Again, for the love of the game.
For the love of the game. And, I also think it's kind of funny that Louis Moore presumably only knew about this uranium reactor because he grew up in the area. So probably basically when they rejected the $1.5 million offer in Toronto, he must have been like, "Don't worry, I know how to pressure the FBI because I know where a nuclear reactor is," which, to be honest, making a lot of good points here. I mean, that's really going to put their feet to the fire.
Yeah.
And this really does show how unable the FBI or Southern Airways were to come up with this money, because even though this is pretty intense, the plane still is circling above Knoxville for 3 hours while the authorities try to figure out what to do.
At one point, you also have to start and ask yourself, what are you doing, authorities? It's been 18 hours. Come up with a better plan.
Well, I mean, again, I think this just illustrates like how unable they were to get this money, because they're caught in this dilemma where it's like the hijackers won't take anything but $10 million, but they just simply can't come up with $10 million. So they're kind of trying to figure out like, what can we offer them that they will take? Because they're never going to believe that we, the FBI and this airline company, can't come up with the money they demand. Because the norm is you pull the gun, you get flown to Cuba or wherever you want.
That's
so
right. Yeah.
they're like not used to being told no, I guess. And at one point, things escalate so far that Louis Moore puts his gun to the pilot's head and tells him to start flying towards the reactor and not stop unless they get the money.
My God.
And the only thing that puts a stop to this is an aide to President Nixon, who was there, frantically gets on the radio and assures the hijackers they're going to get their $10 million. Eventually, the plane has to land in Lexington, Kentucky to refuel. Then they resume threateningly circling Oak Ridge. At this point, it's about 1 p.m., so 18 hours since they took off from Birmingham. And while all of this has been going on, Southern Airways has basically been contacting anyone and everyone they can think of, trying to get this money together. Somehow they managed to scrape together another $1 million. So now they have about $2.5 million in total, but they don't think the hijackers are going to go for this offer. So instead they tell the hijackers, hey, we've got the $10 million. Come land in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and we'll hand it over to you. And what they're banking on here is the hijackers won't count the money, and they also won't be able to visually estimate that they're $7.5 million short.
Nah.
And hilariously, they also decide to use a lot of $20 bills instead of 50s or 100s, so it'll like literally look like more bills in total.
Yeah, very cool. That's a classic one. Classic
I
one.
mean, honestly, kind of a genius move. Now, in Chattanooga, the plane lands. They give the hijackers the money, which, as predicted, they just trust the FBI that it's actually $10 million. They also give the hijackers 10 parachutes, 7 bulletproof vests, 7 crash helmets, some medical supplies, 50 dinners, and several large canvas bags. These were all also things they had asked for. And I don't think they asked for this, but the FBI actually gave them a few buckets of Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Very cool.
Now, maybe this is a racially charged move, but
I agree.
I like to imagine that the FBI is like, look, these guys need some food in their stomach to sober up a bit after they got into the liquor cabinet. Maybe they're also like, how could anyone really be that upset when you're eating KFC? So I don't know.
Listen, I understand that may be a racially charged thing, but I would not say no to $2.5 million and a bucket of KFC. I think few people would.
Especially if you think that 2.5 is $10 million.
Exactly. I mean, yeah. $2.5 million under false pretenses.
It would seem like it's bound to put anyone in a good mood. So at this point, you know, they've got their demands met. So Luis, now what? What do you think?
I would say, yeah, take it. Let's just leave. Just go to Detroit.
Yeah, but I mean seriously, what's the exit strategy here? Like, what do you do next if you're the hijacker?
Man, I don't know. I think they probably would be fooled. I mean, considering the fact they're drunk, you know,
right?
They're probably thinking, hey, they're being genuine with meeting our demands and being kind to us. Yeah, let's trust them. Like genuinely, I'm thinking that they might just say, yeah, it's good. You know?
Well, they'd be pretty trusting if they just decide to go ahead and deboard the plane in Chattanooga while the FBI is right there.
Mm-hmm.
That is not ultimately what they decide to do. They, in fact, do not even release the hostages.
Very cool.
Instead, they go for the tried and true escape plan of take this plane to Cuba, baby. We're going to Cuba.
Why did I not think about it? Of course, it all circles back to Cuba.
It's so obvious. Just go to Cuba.
Of course.
It's free.
Just go to Cuba. Just go to Cuba.
Now, on the way to Cuba, the hijackers gave some of their ransom money to the passengers, and seemingly they were pretty generous because they allegedly gave the captain and co-pilot approximately $300,000. So, in all likelihood, by the end of this, they probably only had about $1 million left in this bag. But the plane flies to Cuba, and for whatever reason, the Cuban government has decided they're tired of hijacked planes showing up on their front door. So, the plane lands in Havana, but because they're not able to convince Cuba to allow them entry, they can't get off the plane.
Nice.
So then instead they fly to Key West, Florida. When they land there, they then instruct the pilot to fly towards Switzerland and then specify that they want to go to Algeria. And I'm guessing they picked this because there had been a hijacking a couple years earlier where the hijackers were forced to abandon their plan to break Angela Davis out of prison and take her to Vietnam. So instead they just went to Algeria, and believe it or not, that actually kind of worked out for them. So maybe they're like, if Cuba's off the menu, the go-to plan B is Algeria. I don't know.
Sure.
But either way, this plane doesn't have the fuel and is not built to fly across the Atlantic. And both the pilot and flight control advise the hijackers that they're just going to end up abandoning the plane in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But the hijackers have guns and they want to go to Algeria, so this plane is going to Algeria, baby.
Going to Algeria, baby. Hell yeah.
Algeria or bust. But apparently not, because pretty quickly they decide, actually, this isn't going to work. They change their minds, and the plane turns around and flies to McCoy Air Force Base in Orlando, Florida. Now, when they land in McCoy, the hijackers have a new demand. Now they want to speak to President Nixon. But before this really gets anywhere, the FBI shoots out the tires of the plane, hoping to prevent it from taking off again. And this causes Louis Moore to shoot the co-pilot in the arm. Now, according to Louis, this happened accidentally in the commotion caused by the FBI as the hijackers were frantically trying to leave. But according to the co-pilot, after the FBI shot the tires, Louis told him, quote, "I'm going to kill you and make an example." The two then struggled, and in the struggle, the co-pilot was shot in the arm. Louis then put his gun to the co-pilot's head and pulled the trigger, but the gun misfired.
Sweet.
AKA nothing happened.
Cool.
And at this point, one of the hijackers came to tell Louis the captain had said he couldn't fly the plane without the co-pilot. Now, despite their shot out tires and the co-pilot's shot out arm, they somehow do manage to take off again, and they're now heading back to Havana, Cuba. Cuba again, baby. It never fails, except that one time earlier.
This plan seems like it's going from good to worse to great to bad, you know?
I mean, they've fully run out of ideas. They're like
Yeah.
when you're hungry and you're like, check the pantry, check the fridge. Okay, reduce expectations, check again. Yeah, back to Cuba. But this time, the Cuban authorities arrest the hijackers, and Castro allegedly promised one of the pilots that the hijackers would spend the rest of their lives in tiny boxes. The Cuban government seized the ransom money and later returned it to the U.S., and the hijackers then spent the next 8 years in a Cuban prison. Now, this prison maybe is more appropriately described as either a dungeon or labor camp. Just to give you an idea of the conditions, during his time in prison, all of Louis Moore's teeth were pulled out with pliers, and he also spent over a year in a small cell with the door welded shut. So that's not great. After 8 years, the hijackers returned to the U.S. and served around 15 more years in prison, but this seems to have been a significant upgrade. Melvin Kale said, compared to the Cuban prisons, American prisons were a country club paradise. And pretty much immediately after the hijacking, there were very dramatic changes in airline security. Some of this was new government regulations, but also airlines were a lot more willing to cooperate now and institute some security measures. And this included things like putting a lock on the cockpit door, plainclothes airline marshals on random flights, checking carry-on bags and passengers for weapons, using x-rays or metal detectors. And interestingly, it actually sounds like maybe a lot more security than there ended up being in the 80s and 90s. So maybe it seems like, they kind of jumped on things, and then these things worked so well as a deterrent that people kind of forgot the danger somewhat and started to phase out some security measures.
Yeah.
So, that makes me wonder, does that mean 100 years from now, if there haven't been any plane hijackings, there might be no more airport security? I mean, Luis, are we born too late to hijack a plane and fly to Cuba? Born too early to hijack a plane and fly to Cuba, but born just the right time to get yelled at by TSA for not taking your belt off?
Sadly, Kurt, yes. I think that's
the state of affairs. I call him like I see him.
Sadly, I mean, all men want to do instead of going to therapy is hijack a plane and go to Cuba. And every year they make it harder for us to do so. And it's a shame, really.
Devastating for Cuba's tourism industry. You know how much money they were making off all those free cigars and trips they were billing the U.S. government for?
Oh, come on, man. Again, we were born in the wrong generation. We were built to be in Cuba watching bullfights with Hemingway, man, and not recording a podcast in our mid-20s.
That's so true. That's so true, dude.
Not that I don't like it, Kurt. I just want to make it clear that I really enjoy what we're doing here, but it's not the same, man. It's not the same vibes.
I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to say at the beginning of this episode, is that like both of these stories, don't you feel now like you were either born to ride a gold rush so hard that you crash the entire economy of a colony, or hijack a plane so good that you end up ruining the free trips to Cuba? I mean, come on. That's a good time, dude.
It's what I keep saying every single time we record these podcasts, Kurt, where I feel like in the past, you could get away with so many different things, Kurt. And now everything is so protected, everything is so watched over, where you can't do any fun shenanigans anymore. I don't want to scam someone on a boat on the way to Europe and somehow become a millionaire because I scam someone out of their money. But I can't do that anymore, right? We can't have any modern day DB Coopers disappearing into the night after jumping out of an airplane. We can't do any fun stuff anymore. All we have to do is sit in our sad cubicles and think of DoorDash's next great big marketing campaign. And it's so sad, Kurt. It's so sad. God.
Yeah, I mean, we're back again to regulation pioneers, It's always when they invent something new that's like a little too powerful for humans to be trusted with, and then it's the golden age until some regulation pioneers come along.
Yeah.
And I think the problem was they hijacked the plane to Cuba twice,
Yeah.
No one had ever flown to Cuba twice. And that's what broke the camel's back.
That's the thing.
Twice.
That's the thing, Kurt. You can always do everything one time. right?
Right.
And these guys did it twice, and that was their problem. Their hubris was too big, too strong.
And I do also really like how both of these stories are like a snowball rolling out of control because, Edward Hargraves kind of starts with like this, I don't know if it's gold fever or just like this desire for adventure and maybe some kind of get rich quick thing. Cause he's like, I want to be a sailor and then I want to spontaneously open this hotel and then I'm in this gold rush, then I'm in that gold rush. And then at the same time, there's like these hijackers who are in the middle of a lawsuit with the city of Detroit, and they're like, you know what the logical next step is? Hijack a plane and go to Cuba twice. I mean, obviously, we will make Tennessee an exclusion zone if you don't settle.
I think the best part is that these guys probably ran out of options. They couldn't do anything else. But the fact that one of their final options was hijacking a plane that was still on the table, that's just a magical time to be alive, Kurt. That's all I'm going to say.
Come on. It was a better time. We've all missed out by not living through the golden age of plane hijacking. No one wants to admit that you'd be plane hijacking. But come on.
Yeah, and not just that, Kurt. Everyone had leg room. I'm sorry, I'm still on this hill. Everyone still had plenty of leg room.
Everyone had leg room.
Everyone was drunk on that flight smoking cigarettes. Just think of that, man, for 12 hours.
Can you imagine the party in the bar or lounge of that plane? Well, you're on hour 26 of the hijacked plane. Mm-hmm. The bar cart's been raided and they handed you $50,000. I mean, man, oh man, yeah, at that point, you could care less what happens. We're along for the ride, baby.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do, Then just chill and hope everything's fine. And hope you don't crash into an atomic reactor.
Screw it. Honestly, get Nixon on the phone. Keep the demands going. Get Nixon on the line.
It's a plan so crazy, it just might work.
Just might work. So when we put it all together, we've got, I like that there's kind of a gold theme all the way through. We got the gold rush, the golden age, gold fever, gold busts. Either way, we're also riding whatever wave we have until it absolutely crashes and burns on the beach.
Thank God.
And so I guess before we get to separating any truth and lies here, Luis, I just want to say, do either of these schemes call out to you more? Between the Looney Tunes price war that completely ends a gold rush or hijacking a plane in a time where it's apparently just super easy to hijack planes and managing to screw it up so bad that you end the golden age of plane hijacking. Either one of these call out to you more?
Well, I think we have to consider something, Kurt, is that I think mentally I would prefer a hijacking situation. However, I do know myself, and I do know that I am a coward at most things.
Okay.
So I would try to do what I can do the most. I mean, I am afraid of police, as probably most people are. So why not get away with a failed get-rich scheme in Australia? I think that would be more my speed, even though I do like plane hijacking a lot.
I mean, I really think there's no wrong answers, It's a real to each their own situation. Some people want to steal a plane and fly to Cuba. Some people want to crash an Australian gold rush. I mean, there's something for everybody here.
I do have to say that if cockpits are open for me to talk to the pilots, I think I could get them to change courses. So I would accidentally hijack a plane by telling them, "Oh, I've never been to Orlando. That sounds like a great place." And they're like, "Oh, you want to go?" So I think I would accidentally hijack a plane, but not, using force, rather love.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm not going to beat around the bush. If I live in the 60s, I'm taking a gun and I'm going to Cuba for free, baby. But I guess it's worth noting at this point that we really don't even know if in the 60s you could get on a plane with a gun and go to Cuba for free, because I might have just made that up. It might be the case that no one was going to Cuba when they stole a plane. It might be the case that it wasn't really that easy to hijack a plane. I mean, that's an odd detail to say everybody hijacked a plane and went to Cuba, but who knows? And so as always, we've got to move to our least favorite part of this podcast.
Deliberation.
So once again, the golden age can't last forever, but we are all golden on this episode. Luis, I told you about the Australian gold rush that crashed and burned between Edward Hargraves and the Many Miners composite. And then I told you about the golden age of plane hijacking that was ended by some men who came up with a clever loophole through the legal system that if you're suing the city of Detroit, just quite simply hijack a plane and take it to 8 different destinations, one of them potentially being a uranium reactor, and it'll all work out, I guess, or rather not maybe. Potentially, but either way, what's the truth here? You tell me.
Well, Kurt, I have a couple theories. First of all, first story, gold rush. I think the gold rush is so far enough away, both in time and geographically, where I can believe this happened. Though I do doubt the fact that there might be gold reserves in Australia. Once more, I'm not the biggest believer of that. However, I think you went a little too bureaucratic on it to not be real, and just like certain facts as having a hotel and things of the sort are swaying me toward that story. Because also, Kurt, you let this second story about the hijacking second, so it would be fresher in my memory, and you know that these types of stories I adore, right? And I identify myself with them.
That's true.
So I have a feeling that you purposely put this story last so it would be fresh in my memory, so I would try to buy it. But on the second aspect, Kurt, I think this would be too big of a news story to not be in the general cultural memory, especially considering that TSA really only started with 9/11. I don't know what other regulations were started because of the great hijacking of 1960s. And not only that, Kurt, but there was one detail that is actually swaying me to not trust this story completely. And I think you're going to laugh.
Oh, I'm so excited and terrified at the same time.
Blowing out tires on an airplane, Kurt. Airplane tires are not like regular tires on any car.
Oh.
They're not necessarily filled up with air. They are mostly rubber all the way through, Kurt. It's almost impossible for them to be blown out as other car tires. And for you to say that the FBI shot out the tires of an airplane makes me doubt this story. And for that and the other reasons I stated, I'm going to say that as sad as it makes me that 3 hijackers did not receive a bucket of KFC upon their arrival to Tennessee, I am going to say that story is false, making the Australian gold rush the true story. Final answer.
So our conclusion here is that truly the tires of airplanes are filled with lies. And that I know that this is amongst other reasons, but I think I want to add this to the list of, based on the year Horton Hears a Who came out, the lyrics of the Northwest Passage, and the contents of plane tires, we think that the golden age of plane hijacking is in fact a false story.
Correct.
But it is true, Luis.
What?
The golden age of plane hijacking happened, and this hijacking happened. I am very happy to tell you people, in fact, did really just want to go to Cuba. And these guys had a hijacking that got just way too out of hand.
I have no words. I'm appalled. What?
I'll say this. I'm very, very happy to get this right off the bat in the season. And I truly don't know at all. I mean, I would have thought that plane tires are filled with air even modernly. It totally makes sense they'd be filled with rubber. I don't have an answer for you. Maybe in the 60s they were filled with air because the FBI did really shoot out the tires of the plane thinking it wouldn't be able to take off again. And it seemingly miraculously was able to take off on all flat tires. But yeah, that was a completely true story. And not just that, but there were a number of other insane hijackings during this time.
Wow.
Included the one that I kind of alluded to about that they were going to break Angela Davis out of prison and fly her to North Vietnam, but instead went to Algeria. That's truthfully like a whole other wild story. So this was really just, a lost piece of history. What was going on with planes in the 60s?
You had your pick and choose, or you had your whole buffet to choose from of crazy hijackings in the 50s and 60s.
That's true. I mean, there were so many to choose from, but this one really took the cake. Something about getting drunk on the plane's liquor cabinet and then immediately after threatening to make half of Tennessee an exclusion zone. That just really felt right.
I would do this on a Friday night.
I mean, see, that exactly. That's what I'm saying. If you wake up and you're drunk in the body of a plane hijacker heading for Tennessee, exclusion zone, baby. Come on. We hate to say it, but it's there.
Yeah.
Now, I will say from this Australian gold mining story, the pieces that were true. So this anecdote in the beginning about the governor saying, put it away or we'll all have our throats slit, that part actually was true. Edward Hargraves was a real person, and he really was credited as the first gold finding in New South Wales, but that's really the only true detail, was that he was credited and he actually took gold that other people had found and claimed the reward money. The rest of this was really all fictitious. I will say it is true that there were a whole bunch of different gold rushes in Australia, so it turns out Australia does seemingly have an abundance of gold, but yeah, that was all out of thin air. The truth of the matter matter here is that it was really easy to hijack a plane in the 60s.
I guess so. Again, now I'm sad that I wasn't there.
I know. I mean, truthfully, it really has made me think, like, what are the things we've modernly invented that we don't have? Like, what golden ages are we living in? What are the pre-regulation thing we have right now? But I'll let you know if I come up with something. I will say I am supremely happy to have scored the first point of the season. That makes it 1 for me with 1 fooling you. So that's a pretty good deal. But I have no doubt that it's going to be a complete battle all the way through. So there's still a lot to go. Luis, how do you feel about everything? I mean, are you still shattered over there, or have you come to terms with the golden age of hijacking now?
I've come to terms with it. Doesn't mean I'm happy about it, about the fact that it's done. You know, I want to be in Cuba after hijacking a plane. I want to do things with no consequences, Kurt. But in any case,
I totally get what you mean. It's an absolute crime. We have to live in this time period where you cannot get a free flight to Cuba. But all that being said, I hope at the very least everyone enjoyed learning about the golden age of plane hijacking and maybe even the fictitious golden age of the New South Wales gold rush. If you want to hear more of us, check us out wherever you get your podcasts. Please, please, please just tell some random person on the street about our podcast. I really don't even care if they think you're crazy or not. Look, we just got to spread the word somehow. All right.
Please.
If you want to get bonus content from the episodes, check us out on Instagram or Twitter. And we're also on TikTok making some short versions of the content we produce here. Luis, anything to add?
If you're going to step outside in the rain, make sure you're wearing waterproof clothes. It's not about this episode, just common knowledge. Just good to know, guys. Don't enter situations damp.
Just baseline good advice.
Yeah, I came into this podcast slightly damp, and look where that got me. My head was not in the game.
It's always preferable not to be moist. Well, I'll say, before we go, just remember, if in 100 years they've let go on the airline security measures, get that free flight to Cuba. All it costs is the price of a handgun. But you didn't hear it from me. Bye, y'all.
See ya.